Whalefall, Gone and Forgotten. Episode 8, Maelstrom. Field Notes, File 8. Today is October 5th, 2024, and it's around 11 p.m. My floor is... it's a bit of a mess. I've laid out all the stories I've found, the notes on each one. Any connective tissue here is thin. Most of them involve some sort of old god magic, but others are more tangential, like the bird one. Yeah, I don't like that one either. Jesus, listen to me. I'm talking to a house. Don't go throwing a fit here. 1 sugar cube, exactly how you like it. That's what I thought. Anyway, my visit to the morgue got me thinking. Places like this town are steeped in old magic. Mountains are usually powerful sites, but Lake Fargo has the added bonus of surrounding water. Any practitioners of the old ways would have a strong well to draw on. The problem there is, I can't find any. And I can't find anything about our John Doe that would indicate he knew anything more than me. Honestly, I thought the morgue would give me more information. Instead, I just have a bad feeling about this house rotting with me in it. Fungus, spores, spatial warping. A bunch of holes in a dead guy that the police aren't too keen on investigating further into. And of course, a handful of these weird stories that keep showing up. Some of them seem like they could offer more information, but then the next one shows up and it's about a man turning into a tree or something. Frustrating is too polite a term for it. I'm not entirely sure what I'm even looking for here. Solving a crime, finding out where these files are coming from, or just going crazy in the woods like everyone else in this town. Speaking of going crazy, there's another file on the floor. Ophelia, Colt, for your immediate consideration. What do you want now? I'm sorry about the blood if I leave any behind. I ran out of bandages this morning. They just keep eating through everything. It was that storage building, the one they put in about 10 years ago. That's what caused all of this. There had to be something wrong with that building, if something like that can happen there. And, let me start over. My name is Caitlin Boyle, and I worked at a self-storage building for about 5 years. Never really liked it. I hate the whole concept of those buildings, really. Self-storage is the new virus of the urban environment. Every time a new property with enough space goes up for sale, someone snatches it up and fills it with sliding metal doors. It's just another place for people to stash their garbage so they can go buy more. A gross byproduct and enabler of overconsumption. More stuff means more space, means more stuff, means more people to watch over your stuff. That's where people like me come in. Regular day shift worker at the newest self-storage building in Fayetteville. It was a job that got me through college, not a dream career. It was a lot of the same. Lots of paperwork and phone calls, a lot of people begging me to give them another week to make a payment. Sometimes people would buy an abandoned unit, but there was never anything good inside. Those TV shows make it much more dramatic than it really is, or they plant something off camera. I came in for my shift, did my work, and clocked out. Not a model employee, but nothing negative to report either. Until everything started to go wrong. I think it began with the new hire. Ed, I think his name was. I didn't really like him from the start. He was tall, really tall, with spindly legs and arms that seemed like they should have an extra joint in there somewhere. He was sickly thin and pale, with sharp bones jutting out of a squat face. He seemed to smile all the time, and almost always could be found whistling or humming or doing something to fill the silence. He set my teeth on edge. I made a concerted effort to never be alone with him, but that couldn't always be helped. His voice, when he spoke, was just as unsettling as the rest of him. You'd expect it to be some raspy little croak, but it was deep and smooth in a way that stuck in your ears. Sometimes we'd end up working together to clear out a unit, and I swear I could feel his eyes on me every time my back was turned. It wasn't long after his arrival when the noises started. The roof of the building was corrugated metal, like the shutters you put over windows during a storm. Arkansas has all kinds of weather, but I swear to you it wasn't hail hitting that roof. Yes, it did sound like tiny pebbles of ice raining down, but every time we stepped outside, there wouldn't even be a cloud in the sky. It would be a clear blue day, and Ed would stare at me with those two big eyes and say, "Don't worry, Kate. It's probably just some bad weather." I won't lie, I tried to shrug it off as weather for a while. Everyone kept saying it, so I did my best to believe it. But I started to notice the patterns. It sounded softer than hail, smaller. Sometimes it seemed like only a small section of the roof was being hit right above me, tiny little things jumping around and causing me to make little mistakes in my paperwork. Of course, it was always a little louder when Ed was around. It was like it was begging for his attention, his petulant children. He never seemed to notice, though, and just continued doing whatever his current task was, as if the pounding above his head wasn't deafening. I started avoiding him even more than usual, just for the sake of my ears. It was always a relief when my shift ended, but once I started connecting the dots with Ed, it was all I could do to not sprint out the door at the end of each day. I wanted nothing more than to walk home with my headphones on and drown everything out. I would fantasize about dropping face first onto my couch for a while, just before starting on homework. My walks became the long-needed time to think after spending 8 hours with the white noise of something that wasn't hail. But of course it didn't last. It started small, a little tickle on the back of my neck, eyes on me as I walked, but I couldn't place where they came from. I scratched at it, turned up my music, and walked a little faster. It stayed like that for a while, and just like the racket at work, I started to tune it out like white noise. Sure, I would look over my shoulder a lot more and found myself gripping my pepper spray a little tighter, but I wouldn't let some distant creep change my routine, even if I started to get that feeling on the way into work, too. I wish I could write everything off as paranoia over a weird guy at work. It would make everything so simple, so much less painful. Thankfully, I wasn't the first to notice the infestation. Small grasshoppers, started to cluster on the trees outside the building, and eventually they made their way inside. My coworker, Maddie, she was the one who pointed it out. She came up to me one day with a grasshopper trapped in a little cup. "I keep seeing them in the hallway," she told me as she dumped the bug outside. I didn't like the idea of them getting in, but crushing them sounded worse. They were just big enough to make an awful crunch if stepped on, and I didn't like the thought of it. I started seeing them in the hallway too, now that I knew to look out for them. They were a deep greenish brown, just the right shade to blend in with our dingy carpet. But once you knew their shape, you could pick them out. It started out as just one or two in the corner, then we saw them on the walls and flying towards the lights. I'd walk through the hall to unlock a unit and would end up crunching one or two of them with my shoe without even trying. I had to get comfortable with the sound pretty quickly. Management didn't seem to care. We all just started getting used to them since no one wanted to pay for pest control. I found myself sweating. It felt like the entire building had slowly gotten warmer over weeks, but so slowly that it was impossible to notice until now, when it felt like my clothes had just been pulled from a washer, with sweat dripping off my nose. The AC remained the same. I could hear it rattling the vents, but everything seemed sticky and slick, like the building was running a fever. The bugs in the halls were slow enough to catch, as if they were overheating. Everything had a yellow tinge to it. Sick and warm and tacky, but still management did nothing. Until the bugs started getting into the storage units. I was assigned to open a unit and clear it out after a client missed a few payments. I was fanning myself with the unit records, trying to keep the sweat out of my eyes long enough to read. Of course, I was made to work with Ed. As we rounded the corner together and neared the designated unit, I noticed the pounding on the metal roof grow in intensity. 1,000 tiny things dashing themselves across the metal, and Ed didn't even look up. His indifference was starting to piss me off. I grabbed the lock on the door, twisted the key, and practically threw the door open. It slid upwards with a thunderous clatter, spooking the things inside. A swarm of maybe 100 locusts flew out of the unit. I screamed. Of course, I screamed. Ed just stood there, smiling. I swear he was smiling more. The unit was a mess. The clothing was all eaten through. There was damage on anything wooden. Books were almost non-existent. There were molts all over the walls and floor. I didn't look any closer. I took off down the hallway to the manager's office. Ed continued to simply stand there, staring at the swarm that now covered the halls, covered him. They were in other units too. We had to open nearly all of them to see if there was damage to client property. Of course, that's the only thing that gets management moving, any possible loss of money, and they finally get off their feet. We opened a unit after unit, bracing for another swarm to fly out and pelt us. Ed wasn't always there, but every time we got near a unit with more locusts in it, the pelting above the roof grew louder. The entire building was buzzing with the sound of locust wings, their little armored bodies knocking into everything until we opened the shutter door and they finally flew out to bother someone else. I called out of work for a few days, claiming I had some kind of stomach virus. I just needed to sit in silence for a while, away from the buzzing and the pounding and the rattling of the storage building. I wanted to sit on the couch, eat something simple and bad for me. But eventually I started to get that awful tickle on my neck. I swatted it, thinking a locust had followed me home, but the feeling stayed. I knew there were eyes on me somewhere. I looked out the window, the one facing the street, and saw nothing. I threw open every curtain and door, even the ones into closets, and found nothing. The feeling stayed, spread, crawled down my arms and back until I was scratching myself raw. I couldn't sleep. No matter which way I faced, my back was either to a window or a door. Staring at the ceiling made me find shapes and movement in the popcorn texture. Eventually, I made myself go back to work. It wasn't hard to notice the lack of cars in the lot when I got there. Ed was at the front desk, smiling. "I'm glad you're feeling better, Kate," was all he said, but the words felt wrong. He looked even more sickly than before, like he'd lost weight. I tried to convince myself that that was what made his limbs look longer. There was a locust on his cheek. He didn't seem to notice when it crawled over his eye and into his thinning hair. The infestation had gotten worse. I was only gone for a few days, but the carpet itself almost seemed to be moving. The heat had gotten worse too, and I was suddenly grateful for the little holes that started to appear in my clothes. The boss had given me the wonderful job of inspecting the roof, over text, of course. There had been a nasty storm the night before, and we needed to make sure everything was okay up there. God forbid we spring a leak. I didn't want to go up there. The sound of pelting had gotten worse, and since I had just come in, I knew that it wasn't hail and never was. But I needed this job. I was almost done with school. If I could just last a few more months, then it would all be over. We'd get someone to handle the locusts, or even figure out how they managed to get in, and it would all be handled. I pulled over the ladder, placed it under one of the roof access panels, and began to climb. The pelting got more intense directly above me. I didn't want to push the hatch open, didn't want to find out what was up there. I pulled at the lock, felt it budge only slightly against the rust around the hinges, and took the deepest breath I could. With all my strength, I threw the lock open. Silence. A silence so deafening it took me a moment to register that the ever-present maelstrom outside had stopped all at once. I hesitated, my hand still on the handle, and made the stupid decision to open the hatch. Just a crack at first, and when nothing happened, I pushed it all the way. With shaking legs, I climbed up the ladder and onto the metal roof, swearing as heat radiated off of it. I'm not sure what I expected to see up there. I'm not even sure if I was shocked when I looked around me. The roof was a long and gently sloping surface, covered in corrugated metal, and hundreds, if not thousands, of locusts. They gave the hatch and myself a wide berth, but I could see the closest of them in plenty of detail. They were the same sickly color as the little ones from inside, but these were all about the size of my hand. They were all facing me, and were clearly crowded around something near the center of the building. It was a misshapen and translucent mass with a tear down the middle. I took a step closer, and the locusts shifted to make a path for me. As they jumped about, clearing the way, it became very clear to me that this strange shape was a husk. The molt of something that was, at the very least, the size of a human being, but with too many legs that bent the wrong way. I just stared at it, barely registering that the locusts had resumed their fervent hopping, pelting the roof and me along with it. I only started running back to the hatch when I felt the pinch of minuscule teeth in my skin. I don't know how I got down the ladder, but I knew I couldn't just leave. Ed was watching the front desk. There was no way he wasn't involved in this. No way he wasn't some monster pretending to be a man. I ran and didn't stop until I found the women's restroom, swatting at the itching feeling of little legs on my skin. I locked the door, then slid down the wall until I sat cross-legged on the tile floor. I kept swatting at every tickle, every time my hair caught on something. My skin felt raw. My arms were covered in small welts, some of which were bleeding, dripping down onto the floor. I don't know when I started crying, started sobbing, but I know I couldn't stop. My chest and throat ached, my eyes burned. I wanted to go home, but I knew they would just follow me there. That was when the knocking started. Slow, deliberate, unhurried. The pelting on the roof grew in volume, moved to right above me. I could feel it in the wall. I could hear them rattling against the door. There was a soft hum, as if someone was thinking. And then they spoke. "Kate, we need to go. There's work to do," Ed said in that slithery voice. He knocked again, and again. The locusts hurled themselves against the wooden door. Their wings buzzed and fluttered. At some point, I couldn't hear the knocking anymore. Just the sound of 1,000 wings and a single, all too composed voice. "Come out, Kate. We have work to do." I was trapped. There was no window, no other door, not even a stall to add another door between us. Just me, a sink, and a toilet no one gets around to cleaning. I don't even know if it was his voice or the constant pounding around me, but eventually I just had enough. There was nothing I could do, nowhere I could go, no one I could call. I just stood up, thinking of absolutely nothing at all, and grasped the door handle. Silence. A silence so complete and sudden that it made my ears ring just to fill the dead air. I knew this trick they'd done the same on the roof, but I was so tired. Slowly, I opened the door, peeking through the crack. No one was there. Not a molt or a wing left behind. I left the building with a buzzing in my head and blood on my clothes. I didn't have it in me to run. It was dark out, and I didn't care. My skin felt tight and hot, and every sensation was simply too much to address. I'm sure I looked horrible. I know someone saw me, even at that hour, lit only by streetlights. It was Ed. I saw him this time. No wonder I didn't spot him before. Who would have thought to look up? He was sitting on a power line, his shape hard to pick out against the transformers. He was all limbs bending at wrong angles, poised to jump. His eyes took up most of his face, but in each there were several pupils rimmed in red and reflecting the light. They were pinpoints in the dark. His smile could have wrapped around his entire head, black gums and yellow teeth. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just watched. I don't think he stopped watching. I don't see him anymore. I don't see the locusts, but they're eating through everything. An inspector told me to move before the termites brought my apartment down on me. All my clothes have holes. Brand new t-shirts end up looking dry-rotted within a week. Everything I own has bloodstains now. I wake up with new wounds every day, pockmarked skin and clothes and bed. Like I said, I've run out of bandages. Maybe I won't buy more. It's not like they'll last anyway. Thank you for your time. I don't believe I caught your name. Alright. Thank you, Mr. Colt. Dad? No, you answer my goddamn question, Henricus. You have Dad's records. Well, then check in his office. He was in Arkansas at some point in 2005. Just check what cities. Henry, it's important for... I will call you Henry if I feel like it. Just check them and call me later. Asshole. Caitlin Boyle died in December of 2005. She was found in her apartment after some neighbors reported a smell. When authorities arrived and made their way inside, they found the body of Miss Boyle huddled in her bathtub. Her skin and clothes were covered in small holes. The autopsy report claimed many of them reached and went through bone. Tissue samples indicated she'd been dead for 3 days, but the holes looked older. I'm going to bed. Whalefall, Gone and Forgotten, Episode 8 was written, edited, and produced by me, Kat Duncan. I am also Ophelia Colt, if you couldn't tell. And I have a very big thank you to say to our very first Patreon donor at $5 a month, Noxwar. I hope I say your name correctly. Maybe it's Noxwar. It's probably Noxwar. Noxwar. Thank you. If you would like to join Noxwar over on Patreon, I have 3 different tiers you can join at your comfort level. The different tiers do get different perks, but all of them do get your name as a shout out at the end of the episode. So if you are interested in that, the link and other of the supporting links for the show are in the description below. I hope you have had a great day, great month. I graduated college this month. I now have a BFA in sculpture, which is kind of crazy. Oh, and since this is going out later in the month, I'm about to go to Italy for like 2 weeks, because that's what my school does when you graduate. So they pay for you to go to abroad for 2 weeks. Crazy, right? Anyway, I hope you all have a lovely day, lovely rest of the whatevers. Okay, thanks. I love you. Bye.